There is actually a very good reason why newborn and toddler is more chaotic than newborn and preschooler at the same time, and that is because of birth order. According to experts who talk about birth order, that if you have more than a 5-year gap in between children, it's basically like having another firstborn. And part of that is because the care tasks of the older one, they're able to take care of on their own. Part of it is because the emotional gap between a 5-year-old and a newborn. And part of it is just the fact that the workload that you have in between those ages is much heavier. That 5-year-old is maturing into the next level of like 5 and 6, where they're starting to actually use their brain. And I know that sounds terrible, but like, let's be real. If we have a child who's under 6 in our home, we know that the brain usage is, well, it's lean. Even more interesting is if you get, I think it's between a 7 to 10 year age gap, you start to see the traits of each of your children being only children, because they live and exist in a world that's very similar to what only children live in despite having a sibling. It's very fascinating. Human development and spacing of children is a fascinating thing, but that is why it seems easier, because basically you've taken your firstborn, had another firstborn, except now you have all the knowledge you had from your firstborn, so you can implement that onto that next child. Some people will credit it to the idea that, a kindergartner is off at school, so it's a little bit easier because the workload is different, but I really genuinely think it's just the cognitive change in that older child that eases the burden on the parent, because they're able to get their own drink. They're able to have a rational conversation. They're not going to make such bonkers kinds of decisions. Anyway, like all things in the scientific community, this is also debated heavily, and especially when it comes to youngest. In fact, I think youngest sibling research is far more fascinating to me than any of the older ones, because youngest, you see such a variety of how youngest turn out, where you have kind of more of a standard on some of the older ones. And it really is about the amount of work that parents do on themselves while they're raising that youngest one. I keep telling my other kids to tell our youngest no. Like, tell him no. Stop giving him everything, because this kid needs to hear no way more often, because they're like, Mom, look how cute he is. I'm like, yeah, he's cute, but he's going to be a tyrant, okay? So let's tell him no. I have a 5-year gap between number 2 and number 3, and so I can see very similar traits, firstborn traits, between my oldest and number 3. They both have those firstborn traits, so I can see the evidence of that in my own family. The ones who have smaller gaps, where it's, I think the closest we have is 17 months. The furthest gap other than the 5-year is 3 years. And even that was closer to a reset, but not quite a reset. I could see that there was a very big difference, that 5-year age gap is a vastly different difference than the closer ones. And in hindsight, I prefer the closer ones based on the relationships that everybody has with each other now. Although for me, I just wanted to sleep. It would have just been so much easier. On the flip side of it now, I really think it's great for them. But for me, as a mom, it was exhausting.